Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
I voted to leave the EU.
I voted to come out.
Out, me, out.
Out as well.
I voted to leave.
Do you know many people in this town that voted Remain?
I know none.
This summer, the people of the UK voted to leave the European Union.
We just want to be Britain.
We were put in a dustbin 40 years ago and nobody's acknowledged that.
Causing a monumental sea change in British politics.
No longer can Westminster go on ignoring the little people.
We are a country that's divided.
So what really has caused this popular revolution?
I'm all for diversity and all for a melting pot, but I think we're full.
It was about Westminster and the north of England. For me, the EU wasn't a big issue.
And will politicians be able to give them what they want?
I think the people who are in Brexit are idiots. I'm sorry, no, I don't mean you, I mean the head people.
We're big enough, strong enough and ugly enough to look after ourselves.
This is Sun FM. It's 7 o'clock. It's going to be a lot warmer than the last few days. 23 Celsius is the mid-70s today in Sulgrave and Hetton. And if
Sunderland did not decide the EU referendum on its own, but it reveals starkly almost all the invisible political, social and economic currents that led to the Leave vote. It was here the UK first became aware of the titanic events that were about to unfold.
The total number of votes cast in favour of Leave was 82,000.
The pound has absolutely gone through the floor.
One European paper, a little unfairly, calling it the town that broke the pound.
Voting in this city has not changed the status quo for over half a century, but all that changed just a few weeks ago. Every vote counted. There were no safe seats in the EU referendum, and only by getting out there and asking people why they actually voted to leave can we map out the bumpy road ahead.
First up, the thrills and spills of the Sunderland Air Show. This region amongst Britain's most patriotic, and it's all on display here. The 52% who voted Leave across the nation now looking forward to a new independence. This city was 61% Leave. So what are the forces at play here that drove the decision? One that most who voted out are proud to stand by.
Shirley. Hello, Faisal from Sky News. How you doing? Can I have a quick word?
This year the weather's spoiled it a bit, hasn't it? Because it's been raining. We've got everything for every single thing that can eventuality.
Always prepared. Do you have a plan?
Yes, always.
That's good.
Yes.
Lots of people don't have plans these days.
We always have a plan, A and B.
So the reason why we're here is because Sunderland has become quite symbolic with that Brexit vote, and I was just wondering which way you voted?
Yes, I voted to come out. Mainly, as I say, because of the NHS. I wanted to support and thought more money should be going into the NHS for like the health itself, but also I think the nurses and doctors do deserve more money. And like putting money into the EU, as much as I don't mind other countries being given money and supporting them, I do think again we should be supporting our own. And I'm one of the ones, especially because the circumstances that uses the NHS. I've had to use the NHS quite a lot this year, so.
The Air Force, the Health Service, the institutions that underpin and define the nation. And here in Sunderland, that would also include the football team and its Stadium of Light. It pays homage to its heritage that lies beneath its turf, the Wearmouth Colliery, from a time when the city's role in the country was clear. The men who worked in the pits supplied the fuel for power stations across Europe, but the Wearmouth colliery closed in the early 90s. Hundreds of jobs were lost. Now large areas of Britain remain left behind from the country's global economic successes, a big problem for the party set up to represent them.
Isn't the reality that your party has a real issue now with what was its core vote, the white working class of England?
There's former mining towns that are in a shocking state. The mines closed, there was no real replacement of it, the social infrastructure broke down. Now it's sport direct, 0 hours contracts, and not even the aggregate of minimum wage paid over the whole week. That's what left behind Britain looks like, and that's what I've been challenging the government on.
Now many of this demographic have been attracted to a new voice in politics.
It's mostly what we used to call working class people. People who are utterly disconnected, in many cases, from the sort of daily news agenda. These are not particularly political people, but they are people who can see a massive transformation in their communities, in their quality of life. They do feel downtrodden, they do feel ignored, and yet when you scratch the surface, they're fiercely patriotic.
The Colliery Tavern lies in the shadow of Sunderland Stadium and has a special role in the city's industrial history and its sense of place.
It was a pitman's pub. They come up from the Coalface, straight in the colliery, a couple of pints, then go home. That was tradition.
John the landlord is a rare thing in this city, a Conservative. This time his vote did count.
The vote itself, it was a protest vote, because we've been neglected so long and so often up here that people maybe thought this is a chance for hear our voice, rightly or wrongly, you know. But a lot of people believe that we should be out for various reasons: immigration, national health, hospitals, ambulance services. We're all very poor, and unemployment in this area, well, we're the worst in the country, aren't we?
Huge council cutbacks from central government. Terrible. They really do need to be addressed.
But a lot of the issues that people are talking about aren't necessarily directly related to the European Union.
Well,
some of them are, but
yes, some of them are. But you're looking at, if we're saving £350 million a week, which is, they reckon that was what was going in, is that going to be ploughed back into this country in jobs?
And people probably believe that.
Do you believe that?
I don't believe it, no.
On the Pennywell estate you can see the consequences of industrial decline, where whole streets were abandoned, then demolished. It is on the site of one of those streets where I catch up with the ex-local MP.
Civilised life virtually collapsed in large parts of the estate, not in all of it. And this would be an area where that was so. Lots of burned out houses, lots of abandoned houses. And for many years, this area was full of dereliction.
Mr Mullen is a Remain supporter who can't quite believe what's happened. We set off to find out from his former constituents what's going on.
How long did you work at Pyrex?
Since I was 16.
So how long did you work there?
29 years.
And then of course that went along with the rest of the glass industry in Sunderland, didn't it?
Took over France, didn't they? Closed it down, they took it over there.
Yeah. So the glass industry went, the docks went,
pits
coal went, and a lot of people on this estate worked in those industries.
There's loads worked at the Pyrex and the pits and...
Can you tell us which way you guys voted?
I voted to leave, me, Beatrix.
You voted to leave, yeah?
And why?
Oh, well, that's voted for to stop being late.
So you're a split household?
Oh, well, aye. True. Because I believed in the EU, who was telling you what to do. You know, they were saying, like, just like the Easter eggs. You can't put eggs on, it's just Easter. No, you lost all the eggs for your Easter eggs and all that.
That sounds as though that came from the Sun or the Daily Mail, did it?
Well, I believe everything. The EU tried to change everything what you had.
Right.
You know, so...
But you reckon, for example, Nissan had a lot of help from the EU to come here originally, so we have had some benefits from the EU.
Oh,
I'm guessing, I may be wrong about this, but the Monk Wearmouth Colliery site where the stadium now is, that was probably cleared up with some EU money, I think, wasn't it?
Oh, aye. I mean, you've got your good things and your bad things about the EU.
It's on estates and in communities like the Pennywell where this great revolt in British politics took place. Nearly 3 million extra voters turned out versus last year's election. They might just have caused the shock-out vote. Clearly, they did not believe the government's tale of economic risk. But what do they really want from the decision to leave? Britain has voted out of the EU, and Sunderland is the city that signalled it first, and might just show where we're all going. At the mouth of the Weir, on the fishing quay, we stumble across the embodiment for many Eurosceptics of everything that's wrong with Brussels: interference.
Working to work and you pay to play. Taking to task to spend another day.
The fishing quota police are on a visit to check up on Sunderland's dwindling band of seafarers to make sure they haven't busted the quotas of the EU's common fisheries policy. They're not happy. Taking back control feels rather tangible here.
Tell him not to talk to me anymore, will you? Just keep trying to talk to me. Just tell him I don't want to deal with him. Did you go in for us, will you, man? 29.
29 kilo.
No, 29 lobsters.
Oh, 29.
For 15 kilos, yeah.
15 kilo lobster.
Indeed, they don't have any fish quota left, so the nets are left tied up, and in their place pots for lobsters and crabs. Fishermen here blame one institution above all.
We're not allowed to catch any fish. For the quota regulations and restrictions on the job, it's not viable to catch fish.
So, is that by the fishing community, by yourself, is that blamed on the EU?
Well, we blamed the EEC for years and years and years.
Yeah.
But we had a lot of fishing boats at one time. Now it's drastically reduced
at
the fishing industry. But the biggest problem we've got as foreigners, we're quota. Fishing off our shores 18 mile up here.
Leaving the EU, you're not certain it's going to definitely solve the problem.
We don't know.
You hope it will. It gives you a better chance of solving it.
Well, in the EEC, we've got no hope ever.
Yeah.
We've been like this for 30 years now.
Yeah.
On a downward climb.
Yeah.
Now we'll see a future.
Where do I work? What do I get paid?
Arthur takes me out on his boat past what were the shipyards.
Does part of you think that leaving the EU might bring back the ship?
We'd like to think so.
The shipyards?
We'd like to think so.
The pits?
We'd like to think so. And the fishing industry. And that was a big shipyard. We have lovely places, man. We've got lovely housing, but we can't afford. And
really?
Lovely marine is what we can't afford.
So you're pointing to that. So you're saying that they've replaced. So some of the ships, that's the marina.
That was a fish dock as well. You had fishing boats in there.
But it's mainly about what, nice flats, and you're saying that they aren't for.
Well, £300,000 them flats.
Right. So an ordinary working person from Sunderland doesn't have much.
Some people, but certainly not like normal people.
Do you know many people in this town that voted Remain?
I know none.
You know none? Well, 40% voted Remain. You must know some.
I don't.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Everybody I know. There's a fishing boat coming in here now, a small fishing boat, and there's 2 lads on there, and it doesn't matter where you ask, they all voted to be out.
Say I got a time machine, and I showed you the future, and it showed that partly as a result of the vote, the economy is going to go into recession. Just imagine that. Would that have changed your vote?
No.
Really?
I would have still voted out. I wanted out, and I would have said 100% of the fishermen up and down the coast wanted out. I don't know any other fishermen wanted to stay in.
But this is a place that has suffered from recession, suffered from deindustrialisation, lack of jobs. And I'm telling you, I mean, it's imagine this. I can show you that it causes another recession. Doesn't change your mind.
No, not one little bit. We've had recessions in the past, and we're getting past.
Because you want control.
We've had 2 world wars.
Yeah.
No.
Back on land, the man Arthur sells the fish to believes the problem lies much closer to home than Brussels, but he still voted out.
Was it about the quotas and the EU fisheries scheme?
No, it was about Westminster in the north of England for me. The EU wasn't a big issue, it's just
about the way that Britain's run, centralised on London.
From down in Westminster, they just do not give us a thought. They don't. The consequences, I think we should just hold our own, and I think we'll get through it. We will, that's for sure. we'll get through it.
And do you specifically expected massive change to the fishing industry?
No, none at all. None at all. These people down there, you know, down in Westminster, I mean, some of them, you think, how the hell she come from being an education minister straight into the food industry or transport, you know, straight into whatever it is? Where do they get this knowledge from?
But you have put your trust in some of those same people, like Boris Johnson. You put your trust in him.
Well, I would trust
the Leave vote.
Well, I would trust Boris Johnson with my own life.
Really?
Well, certainly I would. Certainly I would.
But he's not. I mean, he's written a few columns in newspapers. I mean,
forget about that. No, forget about that.
Okay,
he's down to earth. He's a
That's
down
right.
to earth
So
guy.
You trusted him. So it's all about trust.
He appeals to me more than any other politician down there.
But inside the Key building, the adulation for Leave is not universal. And it's here I find that elusive creature, a Remainer.
I couldn't find a single reason to vote to leave. It's regression to me. That's what it is.
What do you think it might do to this town?
I mean, I think it'll have the opposite effect to what people who voted out are hoping for. I hope I'm wrong. But I cannot see it having a positive effect, you know. I think workers' rights will be I think we'll all end up with less rights than what we have now, and you know, I think there's going to be places closing down.
There's no doubt about it. Successive governments have not managed the lack of industry or the deindustrialisation in the north.
Passed the buck. Yeah.
And passed the buck. But that blame that a place like Sunderland might place on Westminster seems to have been diverted towards
the EU. It's
EU.
ironic. I mean, you know, the North East is one of the places that's benefited the most from the EU. I think. You know, I think we've had a lot of investment here. I think we've done very well. This building here was built by the EU.
This building, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What, with EU funding?
Yeah.
And yet the fishermen all voted out.
Most of them.
Well, how do you explain that?
I can't. That's why I voted for Remain.
This is a brand new problem, a problem without any clues.
All the way up the banks of the Wear, this city and region has seen hundreds of millions in funding routed from Brussels. The North East saw the highest per person EU funding of any English region. Its impact is visible, spelt out on the road signs near the new Wear crossing. The aquatic centre on the old colliery site, and improvements to a local country park.
Sunderland and the North East overall have done pretty well out of EU funding, especially in the reclamation of land that was polluted after the collapse of some of the older and more polluting industries. The sad thing about it is that it's kind of cutting off your nose to spite your face, because if the economy declines as a result of our exit from the EU, places like Sunderland will be the first to suffer.
But trade is even more important than aid. What happens at the famous Nissan car factory is key for the city's post-Brexit future. Not just its 7,000 workers, the factory symbolises a region that exports more per head to the European Union than any other in the UK. Its entire existence here was down to the European single market.
In order to be properly European and be able to sell our car unrestricted throughout the EEC, we have to achieve a high local content on the car.
Margaret Thatcher had gone to Tokyo to promise the company access to the free trade common regulation area. She fought at an EU summit to help Nissan class the Sunderland-built Bluebird as a European car, not a Japanese one. A tenth of all jobs across the North East are connected to trade with the EU, and many workers in those industries actually voted out.
Yes, I certainly had concerns for my job, as do a lot of other people. But I think I'm looking at a much bigger picture than my generation, or even my daughter's generation. I'm looking ahead of that. It's not transparent enough. There's a lot of, it's basically a corporation making money for itself, and even though I believe us as a country should be in an EU. The EU needs to be modified. And the only way that's ever going to happen is if a major player leaves. If you've got nothing at all and you're offered an alternative to stay where we are because we don't know what's around the corner, people who've got nothing at all will go around the corner every time. What have they got to lose? And I think there was a lot of people in this area typical of that.
Some Leave voters were willing to risk their own jobs for their vote. Over half of all UK Leave voters say Brexit is likely to see short-term economic damage, but hardly any, just 7%, believe that this damage will be long-term. Across from the quay, a sign of the city's new economy. The old Sunderland Polytechnic is now a successful university.
This is the very spot where Sunderland used to make ships for the world, and 3 decades after it ended, the main export earner here is now higher education, not the high seas. The jobs replaced, but not like for like. The Brexit vote showing that the losers from free trade and free movement are now hitting back.
Freedom to trade and move has increased wages and job opportunities for those who are highly educated, mobile, have degrees. Yet it's squeezed jobs and real wages for many lower-skilled workers. This city thrived out of world trade, once being the biggest supplier of the very vessels that made it possible. Lifelong employment and economic certainty emerged out of that world in the yards, pits, glassworks and fishing boats. It has not returned, and all that makes me begin to understand why this city was willing to vote in a way that could risk its relationship with its biggest trade partner. Sunderland led Britain out of the European Union and shocked the world, and here they firmly believe they can go it alone.
I've met so many people who look the same.
At the airshow finale, great displays of British identity and military might. The RAF shows off one of its Typhoon fighter jets, the Eurofighter, built somewhat ironically with European allies. A retreat from an amphibious assault on Seaburn Beach to the Navy flagship HMS Bulwark. Brexit, though, has raised big questions about Britain's place in the world, Englishness, and a new identity politics.
We look out upon the sea, the coast is always changing.
Near the docks in Sunderland's Trafalgar Square, one Leave campaigner tells me the country's used to weathering difficult times.
So you're Sunderland born and bred?
Yes.
And you've
I'm a
come back
Mackem,
and you've
yeah.
come back home.
Yeah.
Fan of the football team?
Hey?
Fan of Sunderland FC? No?
Silly question.
Okay.
Of course. You know,
And-
there's,
but
a,
obviously
there's a
that-
list of all the people that from Sunderland that fought in the Battle of Trafalgar. This is our history. This is what we do. This is what we did. We moved from the days of serfdom through hard work and developing democracy into what it is. Have you seen what happens in the EU? And we've got to worry about leaving them. We're big enough, strong enough and ugly enough to look after ourselves.
Do you think there are historical parallels? Do you think history matters? I mean, this is a monument to history and our relationship
of course
with
it does.
continental
I mean,
Europe.
this is. I mean, this is in our soul. It's in our being. We are British. We're not European.
Tapping into this feeling, the Leave campaign's trump card ahead of the vote was control of immigration, and it worked in the smaller English towns and cities that decided the vote.
We just want to be Britain. It's moving up the country. You've seen it yourself. It's cosmopolitan city, London now, and it will come all the way up. But it's not the immigration coming up. It's the undercutting and trying to the burgers and that is what they wear.
Elsewhere on Pennywell, Dennis and his grandson, Anton, both voted Leave and yet see migration very differently.
It doesn't seem like there's many migrants in Sunderland.
No, don't think so.
It wasn't a big issue for you?
Oh, no.
Yeah,
and we didn't bother them, they didn't bother us. So, yeah.
I think there's loads of them here. There's loads.
Oh, really?
I think there's loads.
On this estate?
Not so many on this estate, but in Sunderland area there's loads.
And being a builder, does that, I mean, people have said that East European builders have affected things?
It affects us because, what? They work for cheaper.
Yeah.
You know?
So it's directly affected you and some of the jobs you've done?
It affects everybody.
Yeah. So that was one of the reasons for your vote? Yeah.
You can't get work, can you?
Yeah.
England itself is split between the big smoke of the pro-migration metropolis, epitomised by the new mayor's Open London campaign, and most of the rest of the country that effectively voted against freedom of movement.
I wasn't ready for the scale of the Brexit vote outside of London, and so the result was close, but actually it confirms what I think and what I thought, which is that we're a country that is divided.
It was the prospect of looking at this metropolis from afar within England in Labour areas, and they saw the sons and daughters of Europeans and East Europeans going into primary schools, and they thought, do you know what, that's not our England, we don't want that here, and by voting to leave we stop the rest of England becoming like London.
Oh, well, the point that David Cameron and others who were involved in the Remain campaign from the outset should have done was they should have, look, hold on a sec, yes, it is the case that your sons and daughters can't get into the local primary school or secondary school. But that's not the fault of the EU migrants who are building these schools. It was politicians failing to accept responsibility and passing the buck to EU citizens that led to a situation where everybody's ills and problems were put on the door of the EU.
The North East has the lowest proportion of foreign residents of any UK region or nation by some distance, 97% British. Sandy, the former sailor who moved back from South Africa 5 years ago, has a footballing theory about why migration is a big issue despite that fact.
So a place like Sunderland, I mean, you're not saying it, others have said that migration or concerns about migration played a big part in the vote.
Yeah.
But there's almost, I mean, it's very low migration in Sunderland.
It is, but they see, I mean, bearing in mind a footballing town, and when we go away on Brocker, all the tickets are always sold every time, and they go to all these other places, Bradford, Leeds, Manchester, Birmingham, Leicester, London, and then they see them, and then it does, and it is impacting here. 330,000 a year. 30,000, 40. I don't know what the right figure would be, but squeezing it that much now, we just can't do it.
Age makes no difference till you open your mouth. Use your time just to work things out. I know that you can't.
Sunderland doesn't have a large number of people, full stop. The last census revealing it to be the city with the fastest shrinking population in the country.
So it wasn't actual migration that drove the Leave vote in places like Sunderland. It was fear of migration and that lack of control over EU migrant numbers. In fact, migrants don't come to Wearside in large numbers. And across the country, there was a connection between a lack of migrants and a higher Leave vote. What do you say about the paradox that those areas that were concerned about migration actually, when you look at the pattern, often had pretty low levels of migration? I think some of them, perhaps it was Hartlepool, like a few dozen migrants arrived as part of that 330,000 net number. What does that say to you?
Well, if you see your community and you compare it to other communities that have been changed beyond belief, you probably say to yourself, let's try and keep it as it is. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's as if we're told we should be ashamed of saying that we're sort of somewhat proud or feel connected to our own communities and our own culture. And a lot of people, perhaps in the northeast of England, were saying we don't want to become like much of the rest of the country.
One of the ex-cabinet ministers who campaigned against David Cameron for Leave says that's not quite right.
I think that was an important issue for many Leave voters, but only as an illustration. I think, you know, if you ask the majority of Leave voters, they would say that of course immigration has its benefits, needs to continue. The change they want to see is decisions on immigration policy and overall numbers taken in this country, not in Brussels.
The opportunity to make a difference on that issue and others persuaded some 2.8 million people who did not vote at the general election to turn out on June the 23rd, just under 20,000 of them in Sunderland.
Last time I voted in a general election was quite a few years ago. Couldn't tell you the exact date, but yeah, quite a few years ago. It just didn't seem, for me, worthwhile thing to do anymore. In a general election, we've had no impacts, so I thought this was a good opportunity to make Britain great again. What I would like to see what happens with Brexit is, yes, that the fact that the economy becomes better, we have cheaper food and products and gas and oil, and also that we just close down our borders a little bit just to give the people that actually live in Britain a chance to breathe. I think we're having far too many immigrants coming into the country that it's taking our resources.
In the North East alone, Hartlepool, with 70% leave, saw turnout up 9% on last year's levels. Middlesbrough, on 66% leave, saw an extraordinary increase in turnout of 12%. And Sunderland, on 61% leave, saw turnout levels up 9%.
It's something like 2 million people and literally had never voted in their lives. I was getting stories from around the country of people turning up at polling stations and saying to the returning officers, what do we do?
HMS Bulwark sailed off from Sunderland in the evening. This was the ship that David Cameron sent to save migrants fleeing Libya from drowning in the Mediterranean. He is no longer PM, and that migrant crisis undoubtedly helped boost the vote for Brexit that led to his resignation, and could now change UK migration policy forever. Britain was bombarded with scare stories and promises during the referendum campaign.
How can you ever let me down? We can take back control over our immigration.
That would be a self-inflicted wound for Britain.
£350 million worth of taxpayers' money being spent we could spend on our priorities.
There would have to be an emergency budget.
And many voters really believed what they were told, not least on funding for the NHS.
Hello, Shirley.
Hello.
Shirley, who I'd met at the air show, invites me to visit the community centre where she volunteers in Gateshead.
It was meant to be for youth and things, and it's like hard pushed. But now that the government's taken away the money, the funding, we'll have to try and fund it ourselves.
And was that maybe one of the backgrounds that people thinking about when they voted?
I think so. I think so.
That services are being cut.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like I've said, you've got people who will volunteer, but they don't want to be volunteering all the time. But it's not even that. We've got now nothing to volunteer for, right, because they've cut all services.
Shirley wanted to elaborate on the very personal reasons for voting out to save the NHS.
It hits home with me because I'm using the NHS quite a lot at the minute. My son is really, really poorly in hospital, and he has been in and out since May.
I'm sorry about that.
Do you know what I mean? He's had liver transplant, things went wrong and stuff like that. I just think that some of the money we are putting into the EU for other things could be put back into our own NHS.
And into community centres like this?
Definitely into community centres.
So you can provide youth services?
Yeah.
So that's the 350 million that they said that you got the leaflet about?
Yeah. This is Peter.
Yes, we
Her friend Peter, also a volunteer, decided it was time to speak her mind. Her parents arrived here during the Spanish Civil War, and she, unlike her relatives, went to university here and across Europe and became a history teacher.
Britain's relationship with Europe
worked for me.
Helped you.
It's worked for me and it's worked for my family. My sister's a dentist, my sister's a teacher, I'm a teacher. So it's, for my family, it's been winners all the way. I think voting against Europe is going backwards. I'm sorry, we shouldn't go backwards. Your history teachers, we should try and strive. I agree with the NHS, Shirley. I do feel I've got a disabled husband. I know what the cutbacks have done to us. They've killed this region. But then the Tories were always going to kill this region. You know, the Tories do not like the North East. They never have and they never will.
You don't think it was actually about Europe at all?
I don't think it was about politics. I think it was I think the people who are in Brexit are idiots. I'm sorry. No, I don't mean you. I mean the head people. You know, I just couldn't, when I found out who was our Minister for World Affairs, you know, it's a joke.
Boris.
Yes. I mean, so have you seen him?
Did you believe what he said?
I'm not a fan of Boris Johnson. I think I listened to him the way I listened to everything else, and I felt at one stage I did feel as though he was like on the side I was thinking of. If this money, if money doesn't go into this NHS, I will.
Oh, I know you will.
I will go mad.
I don't.
I need to be assured that this money, because that's why I voted to come out.
So he would have been lying to you, wouldn't he?
Yes,
Yeah, well,
yes,
that's true.
and it's not
He
right.
would have lied to you.
It's not right.
Shirley and Peter agreed to club together to charter a bus to drive to London if the NHS does not get the money. And they might need to start saving, because almost as soon as the result came in, it became clear there was no Brexit blueprint, with the Leave side conceding that the planning didn't even get started until after the vote.
The civil service sort of rolled into action, you know, literally within hours of the formal announcement having been made. So if there wasn't detailed planning in advance of the result, the planning process certainly started immediately after the result was known.
Now that's in the hands of a new Prime Minister who has a handy catchphrase at home and abroad.
Brexit means Brexit. Brexit means Brexit. Brexit means Brexit. I'm very clear Brexit does mean Brexit.
And she's tasked her cabinet Brexit supporters to come up with the best possible plan by the end of the year.
We were only given 2 choices on the ballot paper, but in this city alone, we've heard dozens of different reasons underpinning the vote, from fishing quotas to funding the NHS, from reopening mines to migration. So what does this Leave mandate mean precisely for our new relationship with Europe?
The argument hasn't stopped even after Leave. There's still a choice over the single market, a trade-off between unfettered EU trade and migration control. In Sunderland, suppliers in the car industry are concerned about this.
Here we have finished goods, which is in this area for one of our other OEMs, but predominantly from this side down is for Nissan.
Right.
So we hold approximately 2 days finished goods stocks here.
You can feel here quite quickly the temperature of the economy.
Yeah, we feel a bump that happens 4 hours ago.
Right.
So we're quite close to the pulse. The UK automotive situation is successful. You know, Jaguar Land Rover are doing well, Nissan are doing well, and I think people will fight to preserve that. Well, obviously, if we're no longer part of the EU market, then that would have a long-term impact on investment from overseas, which is exactly why we're looking for the new incoming government to provide very strong leadership in the negotiations to remain part of the free market and therefore to secure our long-term futures.
At the moment, there's some uncertainty about that.
At the moment, we don't know anything.
And that lack of a Brexit plan is being talked about in boozers across the country, whichever way people voted.
If we were going to lose funding off the EU, especially around here, with the likes of the automotive industry, if we're going to lose funding, the government should have had a plan in place of what's going to happen. Regardless of that, we've still got to get a free tariff trade deal. We've still got to get the single market. Whichever
I think that's what
plans
shocked
they go, they've got to go for that.
people on the outside, though, wasn't it? It was like the North East really relies on the EU, and they've, you know, pretty much fought it out. But I think it was because it was about a lot of other things.
Yeah. My reason I would stand for voting out.
Yeah.
But if a mate of mine lost his job because of that, I would certainly regret.
Yeah.
The fact that I've gone down
But you were looking at the bigger picture.
But I'm still looking at the bigger picture, you know.
But many people in Sunderland are willing to risk trade tariffs on the city's main exports out of the single market to fulfil what they see as promises for UK control of migration.
If they do a soft exit, whereas they allow the freedom of movement to continue, then I think they've just totally blown the whole Brexit out of the water, really.
Single market?
Well,
that's a compromise that the government can push through quickly and decisively?
No. Brexit means Brexit, and we'll take our chances, because we believe that even with world trade tariffs, we'd still be better off.
Well, I mean, Nissan won't be better off with world trade tariffs of 10%.
Of course it will.
Really?
Of course it will.
This is going to be the central debate in UK politics in the coming months, and the Mayor of London feels promises over the protection of jobs in the single market need to be kept.
I lost the argument, and now it's for them to, persuade the European Union how we can get the best of both worlds, how it's possible to have access to a single market and not have free movement of labour.
And for those that say you just need to push the button on Article 50 as soon as possible?
Be very, very careful. At the moment, the businesses aren't leaving. At the moment, they have hope. They're being reassured by me and by others that we've got a plan in relation to making sure we get the best deal possible. Once we've served notice, then the stopwatch starts.
If we finish up in 2020, still part of this single market, then I think the political backlash you could see in 2020 could be even greater than the pace of change we've seen this year.
Would you see that as a betrayal?
Absolutely and completely. We voted to leave political union. That means we leave the single market and we take back control of our borders. And the acid test of Brexit that the voters will face in 2020 is, have we got back our territorial waters?
Fishing?
Absolutely.
So the acid test for Brexit is fishing? I
think it is, and I tell you why. It's going to take some considerable courage to say to our European partners, I'm very sorry. I know you've had a fabulous time catching 80% of our fish, but we're actually going to take back what is rightfully ours.
Music to the ears of those back at Sunderland's fishing quay. Here, the Leave vote driven by a combination of the promise of a renaissance at sea and the perception of no risk to Sunderland's main export.
That Nissan plant's never ever going to leave Sunderland. They'll never ever get a workforce like they've got in Sunderland.
Okay.
Never ever.
So for you, there was never a risk of that, so
No.
that idea did not matter?
No, not at all. Not at all.
I make one last visit to the estate, where there's now hope that this political revolution might actually change something.
Okay, so you've taken me to the Working Man's Club in Pennywell. How long this been here?
About 60 years.
And as long as you've been here?
Yes. Times change, but
still play
dance, isn't it?
Yeah. Let's have a look. When you look at your city that you've lived in for so many decades, do you like what it is now?
No, not really, because as you said, it's been decimated, isn't it?
Really? Okay.
It has been. I mean,
and whose fault is that?
You used to have about 4 or 5, 6 shipyards here.
Yeah.
You know.
But that's not the EU's fault.
Oh no.
You don't blame the EU for
No.
No. Okay. That's the government's fault.
It's government, yes. That it was the Tories what brought it down. You know.
When you cast that vote for Leave, how did you hope it would change your city?
To bring more jobs into us. Not just like Nissans we've got.
Yeah.
Other industries what could work around. One of the shipyards still in mothballs. Could reopen.
Could reopen one of the shipyards?
Yeah.
And so the people coming into a place like this, the younger men, could get jobs back into shipyards?
Aye, definitely.
And in the end, this is about working men and women. The voices of Left Behind Britain in Sunderland and elsewhere have now been heard loud and clear. But the Mackham mandate is a little mixed up by the variety of political promises made during the campaign, which cannot all be delivered. And so Brexit will mean Brexit, with new Prime Minister Theresa May ending up with the power to define it in her own way. Some voters, even on the Leave side, are going to be disappointed.